The session we're here today for is Where Are We Heading? The Current State of OpenStreetMap in Numbers. The speaker is Benjamin Herford. His video is going to be playing here, and then him and I will be joining you shortly via video call, which will also stream on the screen. So enjoy, and I will see you all again soon.
Hey everyone, welcome to my talk. My name is Benjamin Herford. I work at Highgate, based in Heidelberg, Germany. And I want to take a look at the current state of OpenStreetMap in numbers with you together. And we want to take a look at where are we heading. So in which direction is the OSM community evolving? For doing so, I will look into three different things. So first we look into OSM's globalization, contributor activity trends for the past 20 years. So that's really the long time span. Then we will look at regional perspective. So what activity do we see for individual countries for the past 5 years? Then we will look at a more recent time frame of the last 12 months with a focus on new contributors. For our talk or analysis, we will use Awesome Now Stats. That's a dashboard and API that we have created, and you can use Awesome Now Stats to gain global scale insights about mapping in OSM. And you can filter for various things. Here we will often filter for date and time range and for country, but you can also filter for hashtags and other things if you're interested. Okay, let's start with OSM's globalization and contributor activity for the past 20 years. So we use a dashboard to get the annual number of mappers in OSM. And you can also copy that link or use that link, and you will see exactly the same numbers or plots that I put here for my slides. And maybe we start with a baseline number. 2.3 million is the number of mappers that have made at least one edit in OSM. And this number, you will also find it in the OSM wiki and in other places. And this number is much lower, and that's expected, than the number of OSM accounts. So in total, there are about 10 million OSM accounts, but only 2.3 million mappers have actually used that account to make an edit. All right. Now we want to take a look at these annual bins. So each bin gives you the number of unique mappers that made an edit in that year. And you see that between 2005 and 2017, there has been a continuous growth, right? So reaching the peak in 2017, where more than 300,000, so 317,000 mappers made an edit in OSM. But since then, we see a slight decline or stagnation in the number of annual mappers. And as of 2024, for instance, we counted 262,000 contributors. And I think that's basically our question for today is, what does that decline mean and how can we actually understand it better? We also see this when we look at monthly data. So now I changed here to the number of active mappers every month. And also there you see kind of the same pattern, right? So a growth and then followed by the more recent stagnation. And to give you some numbers, so 1st of January 2017, or January 2017, about 53,000 contributors. The all-time high in April 2021, 58,000 contributors. More recently, August, 52,000 contributors, but also some lower numbers, 41,000 in December 2023. So in general, you could say nowadays usually somewhere between 40,000 and 50,000 active mappers every month. Pretty stable, going up and down a little bit, but that's also usual. And now we want to break this down into 4 bins to be able to take a look at where these contributors have actually been active. So to get a more spatial perspective on that, we chose 4 time ranges, 2005 to 2010, and then the next 5 years, 2010 to 2015, 2015 to 2020, 2020 to 2025. And for those, we look at the maps, and that's what you see here. Again, you can use the links to inspect everything in detail if you like. So first phase of OSM 25 to 2010, maybe one thing that stands out, if you look at the map, it's spatially very biased. That means that a few countries, a few places stand out, whereas for many other places, we see only very little activity. And at that time, biggest OSM communities were in Europe and North America. But I want to highlight that also in many other countries, other places, the OSM communities started to develop on a rather small scale, but in many, many countries, there were already active people mapping in OSM, like the Philippines, India, Brazil. Yeah, if you look at the numbers, there's pretty stable basis of people already mapping back then. Now we go to the next phase, 2010 to 2015. And first thing that you notice when you look at the map is that the spatial bias remains. So it didn't really change a lot. So we still have this very imbalanced map where a few countries stand out and a large number of other countries has rather low contributor numbers. And here, what happened in that phase, that in many European countries like Germany, Russia, but also a few others, we've seen fast growth in the size of the mapping. And only in the next phase, we see that this happened also in other places. So now here, for the first time, you could argue that the spatial bias is reduced. It's still visible, but it's not as strong as we used to see it in the past, right? So the difference that you see on the map between the size of circles is not that big anymore. But you see many other countries that have experienced a strong growth in the OSM community, often located in the global south. So this now is already a better picture if you look at spatial bias compared to what we've seen before. And now we look at the last 5 years. And now it gets a bit more complicated. Maybe first thing to note when you look at the map is it didn't really change, or changed a little bit, but the overall picture didn't really change. So the spatial bias that we still have is there and didn't really reduce any further. And we have a complex pattern of some countries are growing, in others it's stagnation, and yet others it's decline. So it's getting a bit more complex here. And also that's what we noted in the overall number, right? That we've seen stagnation. Okay, the question now is where are we heading? So what's up next? So one question here is, I guess, what are the pathways to revive or rekindle the growth of the OSM community globally? I think. And my question is also like, is OSM at a turning point? So do we need to do something to kind of, get back into the phase of growth and growing our community? Or is this now just the start of a decline that is upcoming in the next years? And I think to be able to answer that, we have to take a look at each individual country and community. And that's what we are going to do in the next step. So the regional perspective, we do it for the country. And I do one example here for the Philippines. Again, we use our Awesome Now Stats dashboard. We filter for the Philippines on a monthly interval for the last 5 years. And what you get is this. Already from this, you might guess that, okay, this looks a little bit like a decline. And we want to use some numbers or some statistical method to get a better perspective. And we conduct a time series trend analysis. So for a time period of 12 months, we get the average numbers of contributors. So here it's 825 contributors per month on average. And then we repeat that for every interval and so on until we arrive at the very last time range, where we then see on average 550 contributors per month. And then we use this with linear regression to kind of know how strong this increase or decrease actually was. And this is what this regression coefficient tells us. So here you see a minus 5.6, which is a slow but steady decline in the number of monthly active contributors. And for the Philippines, that means now that compared to the beginning of 2021, we see a reduction of monthly active contributors by about 275 members. And okay, now this kind of workflow we repeat for every country. What we end up with is a map like this. And here I highlighted first the countries that are trending, so where we see a growth in the community activity. And you see that, okay, two countries stand out here with the highest number of absolute increase, which is the US and Germany, which, yeah, already have a quite large community, but that community is growing constantly stable over the last years. And we also see growing communities in many other places. So we see it in Colombia, we see it in Kenya, we see it in India, and all the other dots that you see here on the map. And for some, it's you see like Colombia maybe, or to some extent for Kenya maybe, you see some of those spikes, which make it a bit difficult for us to judge how sustainable that growth is. But at least it gives us an indication here that what you see on the map here are the countries where the community has been growing. Now we do the opposite, and we take a look at the countries where numbers were shrinking. So I call it fading away here. So again, a large circle indicates like a large reduction in active mappers per month. And we have countries like Guatemala here, where you see large mapping activity in 2021, 2022. I think mainly this was connected to mapping in the hot task manager, and that kind of faded out or faded away, and it's not happening anymore. That's why you see a strong reduction. So you might consider this an outlier, and there are a few more of these outlier cases. Still, I think it's good for us to know about these numbers to check, okay, what does this actually mean then for the long-term community size? But there are also other countries where that I would not consider an outlier like Guatemala. If you look at Russia, we see a pretty stable decline over the past years. And that's not related to task manager mapping for sure. So in Russia, about 500 mappers less active now compared to 5 years earlier. And we see it also in a few other countries that have a strong OSM community, but it seems like at the moment these communities are having struggled. I don't know exactly, I don't know the reasons, but at least from the numbers, it looks like these communities are shrinking. And I would be very much interested in what are the factors or the reasons behind this effect. So we see this in Nigeria or Tanzania or Nepal, all places where there are many active people and actually like really active communities, but still, if you look at the number of people that map something in OSM, for all of these countries, they are declining. And this is the big picture again, where you put everything together. So it's there's also a slight spatial pattern here. So Europe, North America, most countries are having this growth, whereas in other parts, Sub-Saharan Africa, we see also many countries, Southeast Asia, where we have a mixed pattern, but still a lot of countries where we also see a decline. Of course, I couldn't show you every country here, but we did that analysis. And if you are around, you can check out our poster, or you can use the Awesome Now Stats dashboard to just enter the country codes that you are interested in to inspect for the countries that you know best. And what are the ways forward? So I would like to understand better the underlying reasons that might explain or help to explain the observed decline in mapping activity in some countries. So how could those participation gaps maybe be addressed? And I have a talk recommendation for you, or a talk that I'm looking forward to here, about addressing participation gaps in Nepal's OSM ecosystem and strategies for long-term community retention, because that I think could actually bring together the numbers that I put together here with actually knowledge about the local barriers or the challenges that communities face on a local scale. The big question I'm asking or having is like, are we heading into a new phase of spatial divide as we've seen in the early days? So is OSM becoming more spatially imbalanced? I don't have the answer, but at least at the moment, the numbers look a bit like that it's drifting away a little bit. Okay, and finally, let's take a look at the last 12 months and get some insights about new contributors. So again, use our dashboard. We filter for the last 12 months on a daily interval, and what you get is something like this. And yeah, per day, we see about 5,000 to 7,000 active members. During the weekend, that number is usually lower than on Monday to Friday. And you see this incident here, the OpenStreetMap.org, currently offline. You can look it up in the forum. But yeah, end of December or mid of December last year, yeah, there was this OSM is not available. So we could also not see any mapping activity on those days. Now I adjusted that plot a little bit to add information about the new contributors every day. That's the gray bar at the bottom. Every day there are about 300 to 500 new contributors. This has also been pretty stable over the past years. It didn't grow, but it also declined. In general, this is about 5 to 10% of all users at the And I looked further into the editing software that these new contributors used. And you can guess already on the left side which bubble belongs to which editor. The biggest one might not be a big surprise for you. Here's the solution. So, of course, the majority of new contributors, they use ID for their first edit. But also mobile mapping apps now are becoming much more important. So if you look at organic maps or StreetComplete, these apps are frequently used by new contributors. And this kind of leads me to the way forward for this part of the analysis. Like, I would like to understand better like the drivers of community growth and what the global OSM community could do to make OSM more accessible for new mappers. Another talk recommendation happening later, making OpenStreetMap more accessible for new mappers, exactly what I'm interested. Thanks for submitting the talk. And I would like to understand better if and how smartphone apps might be the new drivers or might be the drivers of OSM community growth in the future. Yeah, many questions or many things that we can discuss. I put a summary here. I could only take a look at the numbers, and I would like kind of everyone else to join me or help kind of put together the reasons behind these numbers. And yeah, this is how I want to close my talk. Thanks everyone for listening. If you want to get in contact, feel free to do so. And yeah, happy to discuss your ideas and thoughts. Thanks.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for sitting through our video. I am now joined on video conference with our presenter, Benjamin. Thank you so much for calling into the Philippines from Germany. It is about just a little bit after 4 p.m. for us. What time is it for you right now?
Hey everyone, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, so actually perfect time.
Okay. That worked out very well. Yeah, you didn't get too strange of a time. So everyone who has questions today is able to submit them through Venulist. So whether folks are joining us in person in the next room over, or if they are tuned in from anywhere in the world, please enter your questions through Venulist and I will read them out and get them answered. So the very first question that we have is, maybe the problem is that things are already mapped, so that's why edits decrease, question mark. Okay.
Yes. Okay, yeah, good question. Okay, first, I think in many places where we see a decrease or stagnation in the community activity, I would say they are not fully mapped, or the other way around. What I find interesting then, if you think about a place like where I live in Heidelberg or in Germany, where you would assume everything should be mapped by now, and if you look at the map, it looks fairly complete. Still, we see this increase in the number of people. So it seems like people find new things to map or other things to map. And maybe this is not happening in other places. That could be the case. But I don't really believe that everything is mapped already, but my suspicion is there might be other reasons why people don't have time or are contributing less to OSM in some other countries. But yeah, maybe people think everything they're interested in is already mapped. I don't know. I think we lost them. I see another question in the venue list.
Okay.
Maybe I just take over. Yeah, we see you.
All right.
I hear you. Okay.
Sorry, I think, can you hear me again, Benjamin?
Yes. Yeah, I hear you. Okay. I'm not sure if they are with us. Are you?
Yeah, is going okay. Okay. Apologies, technical we okay, so were there significantly more contributors through HOT during the COVID year?
Also a good question. I would say in many places, probably yes. So there are many places where there was a lot of remote mapping activity happening. I think 2020, 2021, 2022. So yes, this might be the case. Also, in some of the countries, I think it's clear that there was some really like organized mapping activity for, let's say, 1 year or a few months, and this now looks like a decline in contributors. But in fact, I think that the local community of people contributing locally like didn't really change. So there is some blurriness in the numbers, I guess, because of that activity. But I think that's not everywhere the case. So to some extent, yes, but not, that's not the only reason, I would say.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for the response. So next question. Maybe in the third world, the base is already mapped, and in Germany, people have more time on their hands to map more things? Question mark.
Okay, it's a mixture of two things, I would say. So, okay, the second part is a bit easier for me, I would say. For sure, I think that communities are very different in OSM, and also let's say, the type of people or who is able to map something in OSM. I think motivation for it is different across different parts of the world or in different countries. So probably I would agree saying yes, in Germany, there is a larger group of people that has enough time to do mapping in their free time as a hobby. And this might be a barrier for people living in other places to contribute something to OSM. So I would say, yeah, this is something that we see in the data, yes. With the first part of the question, I'm not really sure if I would agree there. So I can't imagine that anywhere in the world the basic stuff is mapped, to be honest. Like, it could be more up to date, it could be more useful, that if you ask people around, probably from their perspective on the map, they will always find something that you could improve, and it would be very useful for people to have a better version of the map. So I don't believe that we will be ever finished with OSM in that sense. But I believe that, yes, there are barriers that make it difficult for people to contribute to the map. And we don't see that in the data itself. And that's why I wish I could have been with you at the conference to talk about that. And there are these two other talks that I'm interested in that put it more from a local perspective, because I think from these you would see the actual things that prevent people from mapping. And having not enough time might be one reason.
Okay. Great response. Yes, thank you. So I'll put out another call to venue lists. If anyone has more questions, please feel free to put them in. We have a few more minutes to take a couple more. In the meantime, Benjamin, I have a question for you. While understanding that you are not a fortune teller, if you were put on to a guess for what might be happening next, where do you think the numbers are going to go over the next 5-10 years?
That's a hard one. So of course, I hope for, I think, a growth in the community and the people that can contribute to OSM. I would say that for the next 2 or 3 years, I could imagine that we will see still many parts or many communities where there is maybe stagnation or decline. So I could imagine that it's going to be a rough time or hard time for many communities in OSM. So that we keep, I think I would be happy if we keep that level that we currently have, and that in the next 2 or 3 years we find like ways or ideas how to grow the community again. But I think that this is also going to take some time. So all the problems, let's say, in the world, or the things that make it hard for people to join OSM, they will just not go away, and not all of these is something we can address as the OSM community. I think as the OSM community, we can try to address many of the small things to make it easier for people to map. Like, I think with being able to map from your smartphone is a super nice way to introduce people to OSM, to do local mapping, to really get what OSM is about. And I think this will have an impact on OSM, and this will help to grow the community. But I can't imagine, or I wish I could, but I would say for the next 2 to 3 years, I would say, let's try to keep the level we have, but get the energy to grow after that.
That was a very great answer to a difficult question. Thank you very much for that. I'm not seeing any new questions coming in through Venulist. Just going to take a quick look at the chat. Okay, so we are at the end of things. So I want to thank you, Benjamin, for joining us, for putting together that excellent video, for doing all of the research into these numbers. It's very, very cool to see. So thank you for all of that. It is too bad that you were not able to join us in the Philippines, but hopefully we can meet some other time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk later, I'm sure.
Okay, nice. Have a nice day and enjoy the conference. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.